Hello, class. Today we're going to be discussing the Eisenhower era, 1952 to 1960. So let's just jump right in. First of all, you see Eisenhower coming in with the background of being a general that helped win World War II. Very popular. Both sides really had a lot of respect for Eisenhower. Both parties actually want him to be president. The first discussion question deals with the economic, social, and cultural change of the time. There's a lot of sentiment behind Eisenhower that he's a moderate. So when he takes over, he puts a lot of individuals in place that have a lot of the Americans' confidence. One of the things they were very confident in Eisenhower with was his ability to take on communism. And you see there are certain figures like Senator Joe McCarthy, who really becomes a heroic figure in the early 50s as saying someone who wants to rout out communism and find the communists in the American government. But as time goes on and people figure out that he's actually exaggerated that threat, he gets censured from the Senate and actually, once he leaves the Senate, dies in a short term after that. So it's an incredible rise where he potentially looks like he could be a presidential candidate to being out of the Senate and then actually dead within a few years. Something interesting though is while you have a lot of support behind a growing culture, you have a fast food culture. This is where you see the McDonald's, the fast food drive-throughs. You see all of these type of inventions begin to occur. You begin to see culture look very similar to the way it does today, with a lot of credit card usage. You begin to see a lot more advertisement. There's interstates that are going to be produced in the Eisenhower era. So a lot more family travel. But then you're also going to see the civil rights movement really begin to grow. And one of the reasons for this is there's a lot of confrontation. So you're going to see a lot of confrontation go on in the 1950s after Brown versus Board of Education comes out and declares segregation to be unconstitutional. You then see the crisis at Little Rock High School. You then begin to see the busing issues. You then begin to see a lot of the segregation in public places come to a head. So you see a lot of confrontation. You also see a lot of leaders emerge. You see Martin Luther King Jr. We're going to talk more about him in the 60s, but you see him come out of this time. You see Rosa Parks. You see Malcolm X is even going to come onto the scene. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton. These are going to be names that you're going to start hearing in the 1950s, but really come into prominence in the 1960s is really when their power begins to grow dramatically. You also see Eisenhower and his foreign policies. He's going to be very direct. If he believes it's in America's best interest, he talks to the Koreans about they need to sign a peace agreement as he comes in office at the end of the Korean War and says, listen, if y'all don't sign this document ending this war, then I guess all options are on the table, including nuclear weapons. And they signed the agreement. I mean, he was very direct. People took him very seriously, being a general. He didn't want to engage directly in Vietnam. He didn't want to engage directly in the Middle East. He felt like those were two places where it would be difficult for the Americans to have a win that would actually help them. So he did not engage in places he didn't feel like directly helped the Americans. You also look at the Cold War is fascinating during this point in time because you have a leader in the Soviet Union named Nikita Khrushchev, who again was similar to Eisenhower in that they could be very confrontational, but they were confrontational with an end in mind. And you really see over time their relationship begin to gain a lot of trust, in that both men view each other as very similar, and that they're direct, they're strong leaders. But as long as they kept those interests in mind, there was a trust that was gained there. That trust really evaporates when Khrushchev figures out by shooting down one of our B-52 bombers that we were actually spying on them the whole time. But up until that end point of Eisenhower's presidency, you really do see that trust in their relationship. And so you see there that, again, America is really beginning to emerge as it's not the British, it's not the French. It is really America as the strong Western power and the Russians as the strong Eastern power post World War II. That is truly, when you see America not support the British, they have a really hard time getting done what they want. And next, that leads us right up into the 1960 election. So Eisenhower can't run anymore. His VP, Richard Nixon, is going to run. He's going to run against a young man named John F. Kennedy. And this is going to be one of those major shifts in American political system. So we will get into that election in 1960, the next chapter.